I'm Holly Matthews and I'm a Bachelor of Science student on my top-up year of Sports Coaching and Schools at the Manchester College Hughes M via Manchester Metropolitan University Crewe. I've been set a video project where I'm going to advise my client on what exercises she needs to do, and I will also demonstrate these in order for her to avoid injury and for her to develop her own technique in sport. Needs analysis of my client. Trisha Ann Roberts is 32 years old and weighs 9 stone 12 pounds. She's just started as a midfielder at Manchester Rovers Ladies FC. The season's just ended. Trisha currently works as a personal trainer and trains 6 days a week but needs more sport-specific exercises. Previously, she has injured her hamstring on her right leg. Needs analysis of football. Biomechanics. Football is a high-intensity team sport characterised by aerobic activity that is supplemented with intermittent bouts of anaerobic activity in the form of kicking, rapid acceleration, sprints, turns, jumps and tackles. Bangsbo and Michlsik 2002. Although the majority of the movement within a game will be of submaximal intensity, Reilly 2000, mean work rate has been reported to be close to anaerobic threshold at approximately 70 to 75% of maximal work rate, Bangsbo Norregaard and Thorsoe 1991. The strength and conditioning coach should understand positional needs, as generally midfield players, lateral defenders, central defenders, strikers and goalkeepers have vastly different energy expenditure requirements. Stolen et al. 2005. Kinetics. Intermittent work is performed by the players in football. They work at low intensity levels for more than 70% of the game. Nevertheless, it is suggested that the average oxygen uptake for elite soccer players is around 70% of maximum VO2 max. Due to the heart rate and body temperature measurements, this may be partly explained by the 150 to 250 brief intense actions a top-class player performs during a game, which also indicates that the rates of creatine phosphate utilization and glycolysis are frequently high during a game. Muscle glycogen is probably the most important substrate for energy production, and fatigue towards the end of the game may be related to depletion of glycogen in some muscle fibers. Blood-free fatty acids increase progressively during a game, partly compensating for the progressive lowering of muscle glycogen. Fatigue also occurs temporarily during matches, but it is still unclear what causes the reduced ability to perform maximally. There are major individual differences in the physical demands of players during a game related to physical capacity and tactical role in the team. These differences should be taken into account when planning the training and nutritional strategies of top-class players who require a significant energy intake during a week. Bangsbo et al. 2006. The following recommendations were made based on extensive research. According to Bomper and Carrera 1999, the limiting factors for a football player are power, starting power, power endurance, acceleration power, deceleration power and reactive power, and also strength. The training objectives are those of power, power endurance, takeoff power and maximum strength. Injuries. Muscle injuries represent a continuum from mild muscle cramp to complete muscle rupture, and in between is delayed onset muscle soreness and partial strain injury. Muscle strains can be divided into 3 grades according to their severity. Mild, 1st degree, moderate, 2nd degree, and severe, 3rd degree. According to physiology.com, the first 5 most common injuries in football are hamstring strain, sprained ankle, knee cartilage tear, hernia, anterior cruciate ligament. The hamstring muscle complex is a biarticular muscle group which works by flexing the knee and extending the hip. In everyday movements, flexion of the hip and knee occur together, with opposing effects on hamstring length. According to Arnason 2006, in football, most hamstring strains occur while players are running or sprinting. According to Clanton and Coop 1997 and Dresner 2003, most studies suggest that hamstring strains occur during the later part of the swing phase, when the hamstrings are working to decelerate knee extension, that is, the muscle develops tension while lengthening. This means that the hamstrings must change from functioning eccentrically to decelerate knee extension in the late swing to concentrically becoming an active extension at the hip joint. Hamstring strains are among the most common injuries in sports that involve sprinting and jumping. It has been shown that hamstring strain injuries account for 12 to 16% of all injuries in English and Australian professional football. According to Woods et al. 2004, this is at a rate of 5 to 6 hamstring strains injuries per club per season, resulting in 90 days and 15 to 21 matches missed per club per season on average. That's Orchard and Seward 2002. This results in, on average, 18 days and 3 to 3.5 matches missed per hamstring strain, but the individual variation in absence from sports participation is not described. The variation may differ from 1 or a few days to several months. Heiser et al. 1984 found that the rate of re-injury for hamstring injuries was 12 to 31%. This results in, on average, 18 days and 3 to 3.5 matches missed per hamstring strain. Verrill et al. 2001, Woods et al. 2004 and Arnason et al. 2004 all concur with research which suggests that the most common non-modifiable factors in the literature are older age and black or aboriginal ethnic origin. As my client is 32 and black, this research suggests that she is at risk again of developing more hamstring injuries. A model by Worrell, 1994, suggests that a combination of abnormalities in strength, flexibility, warm-up, fatigue increases the risk of hamstring strain. Strength training, and specifically force development. The benefits of strength training are increased muscular strength and endurance, decrease in body fat, stronger tendons and ligaments, decrease in blood pressure, and improves glucose tolerance. According to syntechnutrition.com, you should schedule power training right after football practice, if possible on the same day, to prevent the after effects interfering with the athlete's game. However, as the season has now ended, this wasn't an issue for the next month, although it was still mentioned to Tricia for future reference. 2 days intervals would usually be recommended to begin with, although 1 day rest periods were enough due to her 6-day-a-week usual exercise routine. Benefits of power training are that it helps delay fatigue. It increases the strength of the athlete's movements and decreases the risk of injuries. The warm-up for this included a light jog, calisthenics and stretching to increase blood flow, which raises the body's temperature. This was done for 15 minutes. The specific warm-up included practicing the lifts without any weight on the bar. This was done for 5 minutes. Bomper and Carrera 1975 also suggests that the athlete should mentally prepare themselves for the eventual strain of the session by visualizing the exercises and motivating themselves. Types of power training. Bodybuilders use anaerobic energy, which means the muscles don't use oxygen when they lift heavy weights. Whilst lifting relatively low weights, a person can achieve more reps of a lift at a high speed, which allows the muscles to stay oxygenated. This is known as aerobic energy. During football matches, players alternate between muscle relaxation and muscle tension. Aerobic energy is rarely used, as when the muscles relax, they can quickly restore. According to Poliquin 1988, there are some criticisms to some strength training programs. Criticisms of some strength training programs are that moving in ever increasing intensities in the linear intensification. This causes very little time for regeneration. Hypertrophy gained in the initial stages cannot be maintained in periods where sets of 5 repetitions and less are performed, as volume is imperative for optimal muscle mass increases. Stone et al. 1981. Dr. Mike Stone, one of the authors of this paper, said that this could be corrected and muscle mass could be maintained by performing an additional 10 reps in the second and third phases. Another criticism of this model is also from the author. Stone said that it would be difficult for athletes to work on their sports techniques when performing workouts with a high frequency of sets to failure for several weeks. He added that for advanced athletes, the phases are performed for too long and these athletes would quickly reach a state of diminishing returns. Matveyev, Linear Periodization, 2001, stated that hypertrophy, strength and power begin with a general sport-specific training, so the client should work at higher volume to begin with. The model shows at what intensities an athlete should work during their training period. In weeks 1 to 3, she did 5 reps and 3 sets at a 60% volume. Weeks 4 to 5, she did 4 reps and 3 sets at 65% volume. Weeks 6 to 7, she will do 3 reps to 2 sets at 70% volume, and weeks 7 to 9, she'll do 3 reps, 2 sets at 75% volume as she comes towards competition.
Okay, I'm just going to give you a demonstration of what the power clean should look like, and then I'll talk you through the coaching tips. Okay, the power clean works muscles such as the deltoids and trapeze. It's useful for football players because it's a triple extension movement, so it works from your ankles up to your knees, up to your hips, and is beneficial for things like running, jumping. I'm going to demonstrate the power clean to you with an explanation. First of all, we're going to deadlift the bar, bringing the bar up towards your hips. You're going to extend your hips explosively. We're going to move our body underneath the bar with a shrug, catching the bar on your shoulders. So it should look something like this. A narrow grip, toes underneath the bar, looking up, pinching shoulders together, back straight, not in a full seated position. Leaned over the bar, shoulders should be in front of the bar. Okay. Okay, so just a little bit further apart, just pull your arms a little bit further. There you go. You're going to go up. Okay, so what did you miss out there? Did you notice that you missed anything out? It should have ricocheted off your hips for the power.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay, so we're going to speed that up a little bit.
Yay!
Okay, there it's going to ricochet off your hips. Yeah, and that's where your powers, your explosiveness is going to come from. Yeah, that's right. You shrug and you're going to catch it on your shoulders. So a little bit more. So really the bar should be touching your neck and your shoulders should be forward, and you need to be sticking your elbows right up. Yeah, so they should be right forward. That's right. Just practice that. Yeah, perfect. Just bend. Yeah, to catch. Brill. That's right. Perfect. Brill. I'm just going to be showing you the snatch. Through the snatch, you stand with the ball, have your feet underneath the bar, so not quite at your toe, just before there. It's a wider grip than the power clean. You're going to have the bar facing upwards. Your shoulders should be over the top of the bar, in front of the bar even, into a squat position. You're going to bring the bar up. It's going to power off the mid-thigh, keeping the bar as closely as you possibly can. You're going to jump into the wide stance and you're going to push it up over your head. Time your stance, you jumped up a little bit too wide, so I want you to jump a little bit narrower than that. And also, instead of swinging your arms round, you're going to shrug upwards with your elbows outwards, and you're going to pull the bar in a vertical position as opposed to swinging it round in a circle. Okay. Okay, slightly better. It was better with the pulling it upwards, but it needs, don't forget the explosiveness off your mid-thigh. Okay. Okay. Okay, so you need to pull it up instead of rolling it up your thighs. It needs to not be touching your body, but pulling it as close as you can.
Hang power clean. Trisha has limited experience of Olympic weightlifting and was struggling to understand the full power clean, so I adjusted the lift into a hang power clean, which is a variation of the clean and jerk exercise without the jerk. Duber et al. 2007. It begins in the hang position at the mid-thigh. Plyometrics, velocity training. Plyometrics helps build elasticity within the muscles. They play a large role in improving strength, explosiveness, speed and jumping ability. Plyometrics can be done on the same day as another workout, just not on the same day as speed training, nor the day before or after. Plyometrics helps the athlete to move their body weight over a greater distance within the shortest amount of time. It is not aimed at generating as much force as possible, but to generate it as quickly as possible. That's by Brown et al. 1986. Malin and Malatesta 2009 conducted a study which demonstrated that the short-term plyometric program had a beneficial impact on explosive actions such as sprinting, change of direction and jumping, which are important determinants of match-winning actions in soccer performance. However, Matt Brixey believes that exercises such as depth jumping put too much strain on lower body and lead to lower extremity injuries. He claims that there is no scientific proof that plyometrics are more useful than other forms of training. That was Brixey in 1986. Pat Evans says that he sees more medical problems caused from in-depth jumping than any other drill. Dr. Ken Lesner concurs with this view and says plyometrics are dangerous and in themselves and will also do things to the body that will increase the probability of injuries during future events. Mike Gittleson, the strength and conditioning coach at the University of Michigan, states that his athletes do not use plyometric exercises because of the risk of injuries. Whitger in 1988. According to Bielik et al. 1986, during the competition phase, the volume of plyometric exercises are reduced, but the athletes continue to perform a low number of high-intensity plyometric exercises. This serves as a maintenance program to keep the strength that has been developed. For all 3 plyometric exercises, Trisha did 5 sets of 5 reps. She was advised to take 2 to 3 minutes rest in between each set and 5 to 10 seconds rest in between each rep. Now I need to talk through executing a safe landing on depth jumps. This is a high intensity exercise and not for beginners as these can cause injury. Trisha Rann is a personal trainer and trains 6 days a week for her football team. It is said that 10% of the force needed to fracture a bone can help to build them. This exercise will use more than 10%, so I'm confident that this will be an adequate exercise for her, which will not cause further injury, but instead will help to prevent it in her games. Firstly, we need to warm up thoroughly using a general jog, and then we use squat jumps and various other movement exercises to make it more sport specific. The depth jump was chosen because it trains the hamstrings and quads, which are both commonly injured in football at all levels. In this exercise, there's a lot more force on the quads and hamstrings when landing than when jumping up. There is said to be half as much electrical activity in a concentric movement, the landing, than in the eccentric movement, the jumping. This is comparable to an elastic band. The thinner band will snap when stretched, however, a thicker one will take much more force. We want to, in effect, build the muscles so they become thick band, which will reduce the risk of injury. It is advised that the athlete should be fit enough to do the depth jump. They should be able to squat 1.5 their own body weight, or should be able to squat 60% of their body weight 5 times in 5 seconds. A smaller step was chosen to perform the exercise so that I could check Trisha's form and the surface of the step was concrete and therefore could be gripped and avoid slipping and injury. Clutch et al. 2003. Feet should be shoulder width apart. Toes can come to the end of the step or hang off. The exercise is done by stepping off the step.
As you can.
This should be done without bending the knee, which will absorb some of the energy of the landing. In order to progress this exercise later on by making it higher, the athlete should not jump off the step when doing the exercise, as this will only make her initial step higher, and we need to use a standardised measure in knowing the exact height of each step. She should land on the balls of her feet and shoulder width apart in a quarter squat so that the energy can be transferred back up through the squat. There should be no pause in between the landing and the jump, or as little as possible. This is known as the amortization phase. Poole and Meneval, 1987.
I'm going to demonstrate the vertical jump. The jumping as high as you possibly can. It works the glutes, the hamstrings, the lower back, the abs, and we're going to just, like I say, jump as high as we can, and I'm going to chart where I get up to see if I can find the improvement. So I'm going to stand with my arms in front of me, ready to explode upwards. Bend knees to get as much jump as I can.
Tester, the dominant one, in the TD 1 minute weekly series. Typically, athletes who have higher vertical jumps are faster since they can produce more force into the ground. Proper vertical jump techniques first stores energy in your muscles, then releases as much of it as possible against the ground to propel you into the air. Perform hip flexor stretches to facilitate full hip extension prior to doing this exercise. Technique involves standing as tall as possible once or twice by rising up onto toes and raising arms overhead. This increases the distance covered in the downward phase of the jump so the lower body can store more energy during the stretch shortening cycle. Forcefully swinging arms down and back and drop hips into a quarter squat position. Explosively extend hips, knees and ankles and propel off balls of feet to jump straight up. Continue extending dominant hip as you cock hip to the side and extend dominant arm up and look at middle finger of dominant hand. Land softly and bend knees.
Oh. See if you can power up with your arms, see if it makes a difference when you power with your arms. And bend your knees. Getting to a similar sort of point, aren't we? I think you're getting slightly higher now, aren't you?
Squat jumps. Start with your arms by your sides, feet shoulder width apart, head up and back straight. Keeping your back straight and chest up, squat down as you inhale up until your upper thighs are parallel or lower to the floor. Now pressing mainly with the balls of your feet, jump straight up in the air as high as possible using the thighs like springs. Exhale during this portion of the movement.
Legs shoulder width apart or hip width apart. We're going to then bend your knees into a squat, arms folded up, and you're going to power through the legs. Like that. I'll just show you from the side. Shoulder width apart, arms bent, and then jump up. Okay.
Aerobic capacity and anaerobic performance. Repeated sprint training. It has been estimated that approximately 80 to 90% of performance is spent in low to moderate. The frequent alterations of activities, numerous accelerations and decelerations, changes of direction, unorthodox movement patterns, and the execution of various technical skills significantly contribute to energy expenditure. Bangsbo 1997 and Reilly 1997. According to DeSalvo et al. 2007, during the 90 minutes of a regular match, the distances covered by top-level players are in the order of magnitude of 10 to 12 kilometres for the field player. Stolen et al. 2005 reinforces this by stating that during a 90-minute game, elite-level players run about 10 kilometres at an average intensity close to the anaerobic threshold at 80 to 90% of maximal heart rate. It's said to improve aerobic capacity and anaerobic performance. This was said by Kainek et al. 2017. Defined as repeated short duration 45 seconds to long 2 to 4 minute bouts of high but non-maximal intensity exercise, or short, less than 10-second repeated sprint sequences, or long 20 to 30 sprint interval sessions, all-out sprints, and include recovery periods in between. That's Buckeye et al. 2013. As this exercise is a maximal effort, a thorough warm-up is needed to prevent injury. Carr 1999. We used additional sprint preparatory drills prior to the main repeated exercise session, similar to those of Kovacs and Lemus 2013. Energy demands of repeated sprint training consist of alactic aerobic. The alactic immediate energy drives the high-intensity movements. The aerobic system provides energy to help recovery between bouts of activity. Repeated sprint training has been criticised as it has been said that the constant sympathetic nervous system activation can impair athletes' recovery between bouts of activity and between individual training sessions. Studies such as that of the time motion by Osnak et al. 2009 found that only 1 to 3% of the matches were performed at high aerobic intensities, with 70% at low aerobic intensities, and overall work to rest ratio averaged at 2 to 4 second sprints every 90 seconds. This study suggests that repeated sprint training is the correct exercise to use. However, due to competing adaptations, which will focus on constantly pushing the athlete to their limits, a focus on glycolic development ensures suboptimal aerobic development. The demands of athletes' ATP, PC, and medium-intensity training. It is stated that this will lead to dipping in glycolysis sooner and cause faster fatigue loss in 2010. Cesar do Nascimento et al. 2015 had the aim of investigating the effects of short repeated sprintability training on the neuromuscular and physiological indices in under-17 futsal players during the competitive period. The results showed that a 4-week period was the shortest amount of time that would improve an athlete's fitness levels. However, it also showed that there was no difference in results for short-term interventions or for the general training routine.
Okay, this time I want you to
Fatigue index is an average of how much slower an athlete will get due to becoming fatigued after each consecutive sprint in one session. Bishop et al. 2011 highlighted that there is not one type of training that can be recommended to best improve RSA, and including some training to improve single sprint performance, i.e. traditional sprint training and strength power training, and some high-intensity 80 to 90% maximal oxygen consumption, interval training to improve the ability to recover between sprints.
Up no further than your face and below, no further than.
According to Oliver 2007, the mathematical procedures involved in calculating fatigue level results is an unreliable measure stating that the use of fatigue index may be questioned. As there is still a lot to learn in terms of what methods are best to be used, we use this measure in order to use the scores achieved to measure hair progression, which does seem to be gradually reducing over each session.